Hello and welcome to the Lend Me a Theater podcast. Lend Me a Theater is a small nomadic theater company in southern New Hampshire, and this is a series that we have done a couple of times where myself, Dwight Stearns, I am your host, and I interview various people involved with the current production for Lend Me a Theater. At the moment, we are in the process of putting up a new show called Deadly Deal. It is a murder mystery. It is going up over 3 weekends, the first 3 weekends in November at various locations throughout southern New Hampshire. But you'll hear all about that throughout this interview here with the two directors. I am joined today by Paul Smith and Matthew Parent. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing this evening?
Doing well.
Very well.
Fantastic. So one of the things that I like to start with this, one of the first questions I like to ask everybody is, what's your background with theater? So, because I'm always endlessly interested in hearing how people got into it, what's their history, and what are some of like your favorite shows that you've done? What does your timeline look like if you had to kind of lay that out? I'll let you decide who goes first. I don't feel I'm not going to dictate that.
Are you pointing at me, Matthew?
I am.
Okay. My first show was in 6th grade, playing Mr. Memorize. He was the villain. He was the bad guy. And I loved it. And I auditioned for every play in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade and went on to get a bachelor's degree in theater. So I loved it from the get-go. I still love it. I had to take a hiatus because of life events and where I lived and all that kind of stuff. And when I finally came back to the theater, it was I don't know what year it was, but it was a long time ago now, 25 years maybe. But it was with the Pittsfield Players doing Moon Over Buffalo. I went to audition and I just couldn't believe I got the lead my first time out after 20 years of not doing theater. And it was a great show. So Ken Ludwig is brilliant. I've since done Tito in his Lend Me a Tenor twice now. And I would do anything Ken Ludwig wrote. I just love it. So I've mostly done acting. I love acting. I am beginning to age out. I'm 69 years old. I'm beginning to age out of being able to do acting. And so I thought I would, sort of start to check out directing. And Matthew and I approached Matthew, how many years ago now, Matthew, for the Night Mother?
Yeah, I think it was like 3 years ago.
3 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
I approached Matthew just on behalf of Lend Me a Theater, but also on behalf of me, just asked if he was willing to direct a show, a very dark and difficult show called Night Mother. And he was amenable to it. And I asked if he would be amenable to me being his co-director. No, I'm sorry, assistant director. And he insisted on the title of co-director, even though I didn't feel worthy of that title, because I hadn't directed in many years. I directed one other show for Lend Me a Theater, and hadn't really directed since college, which was many years ago. So I wasn't really feeling like I had directing down, but as a couple of people said to me, Paul, you've been doing theater for so long, you will pick up directing very quickly. I knew Matthew because he directed me in an original play at the Hatbox Theater called The World Was Yours, and it was a great experience. The play was a great experience, and being directed by Matthew was a great experience. I'm like, I've got a lot to learn from this man. He knows his stuff. He's very good at what he does. So if I'm going to move into directing, he's the person I want to learn from. And that's part of why I suggested I assistant direct for Night Mother. And again, I would have been happy with assistant director for this play. Again, he insisted on co-director because he's a very kind and generous man. Night Mother never happened because the Hatbox shut down. We had already held auditions. We had already cast it. We had already set up a rehearsal schedule. We had already distributed scripts, and boom, the rug was pulled out from under us, and it was very disappointing, very sad. So I was really excited that we were looking for a director for this show, and I suggested Matthew, and I told the LMAT board that I would approach Matthew and asked if it would be okay with everybody if he was willing to take me on again as co-director, and that's where we are now. And by the way, I'm coming to you from Darkwood Manor, which is in upstate New York. So it's the parlor. This is the parlor I'm in. It's a very, very nice parlor.
Looks cozy. I see that fire is roaring back there.
Beware.
So Matthew, what is your history with theater?
Well, first, Paul, thank you for your kind words. You're too kind to me. You really are.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. So I've been involved in theater for, oh my God, since I can remember. I started when I was a little kid, always wanting to be in the theater. And then I went to school for it. And I knew pretty early on that I wasn't cut out to be an actor. That was never the role for me. I knew I wanted to do something backstage, stage managing or directing. And pretty soon I decided that I wanted to direct, and so I went to school for that and studied and had good professors, and just really knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I was very fortunate. I got to work pretty early in my career, and here in New Hampshire, I was the producing director of the American Stage Festival in the 90s. And I had started there as a young person because I interned there when Larry Carpenter was the artistic director there. And so, I got to work with a lot of really great people when I was an intern. And then, 15 years later, got to be the producing director there, and got to work again with a lot of great people there. And then after that, my career took me to New York, and I worked in New York theater for a while, and over time moved into sort of the management part of theater as well. And that got me into New York City, where I also had a background in business. So I was a production accountant for. I worked for a CPA firm in New York City that did a lot of Broadway and off-Broadway shows, and so I was a production accountant on a lot of Broadway shows for a period of time, which was really exciting because I got to be a part of that whole community, which is very different than like the regional theater community. So that was a lot of fun. But I've been doing theater for a long, long time, and as Paul said, I got involved with LMAT because LMAT did a show, a world premiere of a play called "The World Was Yours," and the playwright had asked me to direct it, and Paul starred in it, and that's how we got to know each other. And Paul was such a great actor in that; he was the lead star of that show, and I thought we had such a great working relationship in that show. So when Paul wanted to co-direct a play, I thought that this is a no-brainer. We'll certainly be able to work well together, and I think that we have. And it's been a great deal of fun. We've had a good time.
Fantastic. One of my notes here was to talk about "The World Was Yours" because that was one of the only things I think I've actually seen Paul in. I didn't realize that you directed it. I loved that show. It was every aspect of that show was riveting. My wife was completely enthralled the entire time as well. Like A+. That show was fantastic. So really, really, it's very cool here. But we're here to talk about Deadly Deal. So what can the two of you tell me about Deadly Deal? Kind of give me like a little synopsis without giving too much away. And why would people want to come and see the show?
I was actually on the play reading committee that selected Deadly Deal to be this fall's murder mystery. And I just love the script right off the bat. I really did. It's clever. It's funny. It's pretty fast paced. It's intriguing, and has lots of twists and turns to it. And I think that Matthew and I were fortunate enough to attract some really good actors that are knocking it out of the park for the most part. And I think anybody who comes to see it is going to have a very good time on several levels. That it really is funny. It's very funny. Many of the characters are very funny. But also, they're sort of caricatures, but still kind of believable. And that the plot really, draws you in. And I think a lot of people will have no idea who done it until it's revealed who done it.
Yeah.
And the ending is also quite intriguing. So that's why I think people should come and see it. I think it's going to be a great evening, a lot of fun, and the cast is really, I think, spot on. Really spot on. It's really very well cast.
Yeah, the cast is really quite exceptional. These are really very sharply defined characters. Very, very. They're types, if you will, and this is a very, very particular type of play. It's got character types. It's that whodunit in the Agatha Christie vein, where it's kind of all laid out for you, and if you're really astute, but you have to be really astute, you can, I think, figure it out. When I was reading the script, I was really trying to figure it out, and I couldn't. That's just, I think it's really hard to figure it out, but it is a whodunit. And so, and of course there's audience participation, and, it's a larger cast. There's 9 people in the cast. So there's just a lot of fun stuff going on. I think the audience will really enjoy that.
We're having a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun doing it.
Absolutely.
We laugh a lot. I mean, Matthew and I will sit there and hear the same line for the 14th time, and just sometimes the way the actor or actress delivers it, we look at each other, we burst out laughing. Even though we've heard it 1,000 times already. So I think that the audience hearing it all for the first time is going to have a really good time.
That's always a sign that it's heading in the right direction. If the actors can keep it fresh for you, because once you've seen that show 15 times, you're just like, oh, okay, here it comes up again. But if they can keep you laughing, then that's a ringing endorsement. So Matthew, it's interesting. I'm interested because you've clearly directed a lot in your career. Do you have a different approach when it comes to a murder mystery versus a standard story style play?
So, I haven't really directed a murder mystery per se before, although I did do The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie once. So I guess that's similar. But this is a little different because of the audience participation piece of it, which The Mousetrap doesn't have. But no, the answer is really no. I don't have a different approach. For me, directing a play is really all about the text. It really is. It's exploring the text, understanding the text, and bringing that to life through the actors, through the composition of what the stage looks like, in all respects, from the set, to lights, sound, the way people are moving, all of that stuff. So it's really approaching the text in the very same way that I would, a comedy or a serious drama or anything else. And that's one of the things that I love about Paul, because having Paul working on this too, Paul is an actor. So, his first look at the text is how are these characters behaving? How are, what is the actor's needs here? So my first sort of blush at looking at a text is, what are the characters doing? In that regard, whereas Paul is more looking at it from the actor's perspective. So I think we're complementing each other in that way.
Matthew blocked, and blocked means, telling the actors where to move to where they need to be the entire play. I just sat back and was in awe of his mastery of blocking. So yeah, he blocked the entire play. I just sat there for the first few rehearsals and twiddled my thumbs and was like, "Wow, yeah, that's good. That's good. Oh, that's good. Yeah."
I don't know if you want to reveal a secret or anything. Do you have a specific method for blocking? I know people who use like chessboards. I know people who use like they'll do like paper cutouts and move things around. How do you approach blocking a scene?
Well, I used to do that when I was younger. I used to do that, and that I don't do that anymore because I find that actually doesn't really help the actors very much. If you dictate too much blocking to the actor, I find that restricts them. So I sort of approach it in let the actors sort of walk a little bit. Let them sort of figure out what is the character doing, what's the character's behavior here, and then I mold it to a certain aesthetic so that people are in sight lines, that they can be seen properly, can be heard, and there are just certain things that you need to do, that the audience isn't really aware of, but that you need to do as a director to make sure that that the audience is looking at this and not at that. I often talk to a cast about how when you go to the movies, the director has the tool of a camera to direct your focus. So you're always looking at what they want you to look at. But when an audience is sitting looking at the stage, they can look wherever they want to. So it's really the director's job to focus the audience's eye on what part of this huge, big picture on the stage that they want you to look at, and so that you can be told the story properly. And there's always a lot of stuff going on stage at any given moment. And with us, we have 9 people on stage most of the time. So there's a lot of stuff going on up there, and we have to focus the audience's attention to what the story is. So it's using the tools that a director has to hone in on the narrative, what the story is.
And that feels especially challenging in a murder mystery where it's like maybe something's happening in the background that is important that you don't want the audience to know, but they need to be able to see it. So like their brain recognizes that, oh yeah, that person did go over here and pick this thing up or whatever. So interesting. Paul,
or not.
Yeah. Exactly. Paul, you had mentioned that in the first kind of couple of weeks, you kind of set back and let Matthew handle the technical aspects of that point. Overall, how has the co-directing gone? Has there been any like specific challenges that you got that has like arisen out of this, or has like it been as complimentary as you described at the beginning throughout this whole process?
Well, two things. One, I just want to go back to what Matthew was just talking about. It's one of the very nice things about being directed by Matthew, having been on both sides now. And as an actor, Matthew is very aware of that things need to feel natural to the actor. If they're doing something because the director told them to do it, it's not going to look as good. And he's always checking in with actors. Does that feel right to you? Does that feel natural to you? And because he's so good at what he does, 99% of the time, people say, oh, yeah, it feels good, feels right. So I just wanted to acknowledge that he's very good at being aware that it needs to look natural, and so he checks in with the actor. Does that feel right to you? Does that feel natural to you? That's awesome. The funny thing is a few times now, Matthew and we're taking notes watching, and we're taking the same note. Like it's like yeah, we're in sync. Or I look at what he said and I say Paul agrees under his note. Because we are that in sync. We are, and I add some things that he doesn't, and he adds some things I don't, and yeah, I think it's been a really great collaboration, really good.
I'd really like to add on to that, Dwight. It really has been without problem. I mean, we are, you'd think that 2 strong personalities, maybe they disagree, or I want it this way, no, I want it that way, or it just has not been like that. I think the potential is always there for something like that, especially on a creative endeavor. People tend to want to get their way in that regard. But for some reason, Paul and I have just been able to really, I don't know, we just see the same things. We're simpatico on this, and we see we see a lot of the same things, and we do complement each other. You know, I focus more on external things. Paul really focuses in on what the actors need and interpretation and what the actors are, how they're performing. And so in that regard, we've just really complemented each other. And I think it's to the benefit of the piece.
That's fantastic. Theater is historically a low ego sport where, you know, where people are always get along and there's never any conflict. So that's fantastic to hear. I'm doing this for the bit. I don't seriously mean this, but I am going to get something out of you guys. I'm going to get some sort of dirt or whatnot. I do know that there has been a challenge for you guys, or I assume there's a challenge for you. You are putting this up in 3 locations. I know that there is maybe some space restrictions with the set in certain areas. How are you approaching and adapting making a set or something like that is customizable to? You're going on the Tupelo stage, which is, as far as we're concerned, 4 miles wide, and then you're going to, I believe, Jonathan's in Agunquit, which is a restaurant and not necessarily designed for live theater. How are you approaching these different challenges, and how have you been overcoming them?
Oh boy, that's a tough question.
We can go past it if you would like, but
well, I'm just going to say that, you know, we have the set design, and we haven't actually hit the challenge of adapting the set yet to the 3 different locations. Tupelo is going to be easy. Concord's going to be a little bit harder, and Jonathan's going to be harder than that. Yeah. And I think it's going to be about, you know, we don't have to worry about the actors at Tupelo, because you're right, they're going to have plenty of space, and, you know, more space than they've had in the rehearsal hall. You know, it's going to be about running it with them when we get to Concord, so that they get comfortable with the shift in space and how much space they have, and then again in Agunquit, you know, how much space they have, and getting them comfortable with being able to shift their blocking to the restrictions. You know, it's challenging. I'm not gonna say it isn't. It's very challenging, but we haven't really started to hit that challenge yet. Would you agree, Matthew, that that's still coming up?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've considered it, and we've spent a lot of time talking about it. And what we did to try to accommodate it is that the second venue, Kimball Jenkins, that space is, you know, as the spaces go, is the most restricted in terms of it being. I mean, obviously, Jonathan's it's shaped oddly. It's a triangular space, so there's very little upstage space and a lot of downstage space. But for Tupelo and Kimball Jenkins is the least wide. So we've been rehearsing in a space that is as wide as Kimball Jenkins is. So we know what that's going to be like. So Tupelo will be, I think, an easier thing to do. We know what we're in for with Kimball Jenkins because we've been rehearsing in a space that's sort of taped out to be that. I think the real challenge is going to be when we get to Agunquit, but that's going to be so vastly different than the other 2 spaces anyway, because there is no upstage space. It's all going to be in this long sort of downstage plane. And so I think that by then, though, the actors will have done 4 performances. This is the last venue, fortunately. And we have a really good cast. And we've already discovered in rehearsal, they're pretty good on their feet. We can throw curveballs at them, and they get it. And so I think by then, when the furniture is not quite in exactly the same space, they'll still be able to figure it out and make the play as good as it was in the other 2 venues without. That's our hope, anyway. That's our game plan.
Fantastic. That is absolutely one of my favorite things about live theater is the ephemeral nature of it, and the idea of like it's this big puzzle that you have to put together, and no show is ever going to be the same as the last one. So I love hearing that you guys are you know, tackling this stuff head on. It's very, very cool. But speaking of maybe not tackling something head on, Paul, you mentioned something in the pre-interview that you're actually not going to be able to. Are you not going to be able to attend any of the shows? Sorry, I didn't clarify this, or is it just the opening show? That
I have one more rehearsal, which is Thursday. Tech week starts on Sunday. I'm flying out on vacation on Sunday. So I will miss the entire tech week and the opening weekend, which
So-
feels awful to me. It feels awful. It really does.
I'm
I
gonna miss you, buddy.
I planned this vacation and paid for the plane tickets and all that like 3 months ago before I had any idea I'd be involved in the show, or I wouldn't have done it. So I will be at Kimball Jenkins. I will be at Jonathan's.
In high school, I remember because I did theater in high school, and our director, like, I think it was like the last rehearsal before the show would go up, she would be like, and the show is yours, like, hands off,
Right.
like, I have nothing to do with this anymore. And obviously that's how theater works, but like
Right.
that doing that ahead of time feels very nerve-wracking to me. Like, it must be just like this surreal moment. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just like,
No, I hear you, because I've never done this before. I've never not been there through the entire process, in my many, many, many years of doing theater.
are you gonna FaceTime in or something like that and be like, what are you guys doing from backstage? Like, or is it gonna be like, oh, you're on vacation, you're gonna be sipping a margarita somewhere?
No, I'm going to be very aware. I'm probably at least be checking in through the Facebook threads that we have going on. If somebody would be kind enough to FaceTime me in, yeah, I'd love to do that. And somebody is taping, is my understanding, somebody is taping the one of the two Tupelo shows.
Oh, okay.
So I will get to see that. So I'm grateful for that.
Excellent.
Is that you? Are you taping it?
This is the first I'm hearing about it, so I hope not. Maybe, and no one's approached me about it, so I don't know.
No, I saw that somebody had agreed to. It's so funny. I just did my world famous award-winning laugh, and it said reducing noise.
I know Kat's had a couple of people who've done some stuff in the background. They set up like a camera and they do the zooms and everything. So I assume it's going to be that person. So you both touched on something in your introductions, and it's not something that I ever so my experience with theater is like, it's always been from a community standpoint. Like, I've never really done anything like professionally, or much less go to school for it. And so I find it interesting that you guys both have theater degrees. How does that work? As someone who knows nothing about theater, what does it look like going and getting a theater degree? Like, I'm really curious as to how that whole process even kind of plays out. And maybe you have different experiences, maybe they're the same. I'm curious.
Well, I wouldn't say that by the time I went for the degree, I knew nothing about theater, because my high school had an excellent theater program. Excellent. My high school drama director just passed away a year or two ago, and we had stayed in touch until then. Wow. That's how profound, the experience was for me. We did 4 or 5 amazing shows a year, and we in the competitions, we went all the way up to from regional to state to New England, and we won at all levels 3 out of 4 years. So I was very fortunate, and it's breaking my heart now what's going on with the arts in public education, that they're cutting them left and right, because it saved my life. The arts in my high school just gave me such an amazing focus, and I was president of my thespian society, and so I think that I wouldn't have gone into pursuing a degree if I felt like I knew absolutely nothing about what I was going after. Now, the reality is that by the time I graduated, I got the real world perspective of how hard it was to be an actor in New York City. That a Broadway actor has a really hard life, and I'm like, oh, so I actually I heard about something called psychodrama, which was a therapeutic modality using theater, using drama. And I got a master's degree in psychodrama. And believe it or not, back in the 80s, I got jobs doing psychodrama. That would never happen today because nobody would fund it. But I loved it. I combined 2 things I got really interested in, which was mental health and theater, and put them together, got a master's degree in that, and pursued that. So no, I felt like by the time I went to college, I knew a lot about theater already. Learned a great deal, had a really good program in college as well. So I was very fortunate. But the reality is that I knew some people that went to pursue acting careers in New York, and I saw how hard their lives were. How hard it was to get a part. They were waiting on tables and trying to make ends meet. And um, it- you know, I decided that I would go for the psychodrama degree because it was a guaranteed income, not much at the time, but um, it combined two passions because I had developed a passion in mental health in the meantime. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's so cool.
That is awesome. I didn't know that, Paul. That is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Matthew? What was your experience like getting the degree and all that? Like,
I had a bit of a different experience from Paul. I didn't have a high school program really. I did a lot of community theater, the Actor Singers, for example, in Nashua, and we did shows at my high school, but it was us kids putting on stuff because there was nothing in the high school that the high school was doing. So we would, organize ourselves, and we did a bunch of musicals together. So when I decided that I wanted to pursue theater professionally, I came from a background of doing like musicals, community musicals. So when I got to school, I hadn't really read any of like the great plays, or I didn't know a lot about drama. I knew a lot about musicals and Broadway, but I didn't dramatics and stuff. So I got thrown into that pretty heavy. And of course, I different than Paul, I didn't study to be an actor, so I wasn't having acting classes, learning that kind of thing. A lot of my coursework, at least initially, was, text driven. Reading Shakespeare, reading great plays, learning dramatic structure, and that kind of stuff. So it was a completely different foreign world to me because I hadn't experienced that as a kid. So it was just a really different environment for me, but I loved it. I really did.
that's equally fantastic. That is so cool. It's just like I said, it's not something like I went to school for film, so it's like tangentially related. And like
Sure.
we never did like acting classes, but we had some directing classes and video production, that type of stuff. But it's just like I love hearing about people's experiences about stuff like that as well, because it's just, I don't know, it's interesting to me. What's up,
I
Paul?
hear it's Matthew's fault that theater tickets are so expensive now.
Oh, okay, that sounds about fair.
Because
Thanks.
he was in the background doing the accounting, and he's, we really need to raise the price. We really need to raise.
Well, Paul, you were saying how you had to wait tables when you were trying to make it as an actor, and that's how I got a business background because when I graduated from school, of course, they weren't offering me directing roles either. So, but I was lucky and got I got work in the business world. I went to work for someone who offered me a job at their corporation, and I worked as an assistant to a CFO. I just started out as a flunky to her, but she trained me in business, and I learned accounting and all of that, which stood me in good stead. So, I got a business background in the practical world instead of waiting tables. That was how that sort of happened for me. So
Nice.
That's cool. So kind of shifting gears here a little bit. I have a couple other kind of not personal questions, just like things that I'm curious about. And I'm going to start with one that I have for Paul. Paul, I believe recently you participated in some form of, I don't know if it was like either a writing exercise but it was something where I don't know if you wrote the play or you directed the play or you acted in the play, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Can you talk about that and describe it, please? Because it sounded very interesting to me.
Brian Halperin, he and his wife founded and operate Powerhouse Theater, which is out of Laconia. And every year they do a playwriting workshop. And during the pandemic, during the shutdown, and there was no theater, we couldn't audition, we couldn't rehearse, we couldn't perform, we couldn't do anything. I thought, well, let me try my hand at playwriting, and I was terrible. I was so bad at it. I really was. It's like, oh my God, I would never come to see this play. And so Brian last year kept putting out there that we've only got 1 or 2 spots left for the playwriting workshop, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote to him, because I knew Brian, he had directed me a couple of times. And I said, I'm really bad. Should I even bother? Should I even bother to take this course? He said, that's why you should take this course. Come and hone your skills. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And it was like a 12-week course. And it was very good. It was very good. In fact, I just got an email soliciting people in his company, as well as people who've taken the course before, to take the course, again. I'm considering taking the course again. It's January through March. He gives you lots of really challenging and great exercises. We had one Saturday morning where the writer of Almost Maine came, and he was great. He was so good. Just was with us for a whole Saturday morning, and the ultimate thing was to write a short play, 2-character play that could be performed kind of PG, because it was open to children and what have you. They do a play festival up in Laconia every spring. And it's free. People come and they go to like 3 different locations where 4 or 5 plays are presented at each location. And great experience for me. I wrote a great play. As a result. I really did. I was very proud of it. And I got a lot of compliments on it. So I discovered I'm not terrible at playwriting. I just learned I needed to learn the ins and outs of playwriting, and this course did it. And I'm thinking about taking it again because it really was that good.
So what I'm hearing is the next Lemmy Theater play is going to be a Paul Smith written, Matthew Parent directed joint production. Here is what I'm getting at, because just similar to World Was Yours, right? It's just
I had, because these have to be very short. They're only going to be about 15 minutes long because there's so many of them. But I had considered taking that play that I wrote and making it at least a full 1 act. Maybe at some point I'll get to the point where I've got a full 2 act, we'll see.
Or you take the one that you work on. If you do it again this year, you get 2 1 acts, do a 2 1 act show, or, like we did with Bob's Date and the whole shebang.
Right.
That could work too. That'd be awesome.
Right.
That's so cool. I'm really glad to hear that was a positive experience for you. Matthew, I unfortunately don't know as much about you. We're not friends on Facebook. I went digging and I tried to find as much stuff as I could. But unfortunately, I can't up a little blank. But one of the things you had talked about was you obviously
he's got a very shady background, so he tries to hide.
I believe it. Well, you went to New York for mysteriously vanished for a while. So in New York, were you explicitly like professional theater, or did you ever do any community stuff out there? And if so, how does like how does the theater scene in New York versus New Hampshire, like what are the major touchstone differences between those two scenes?
So when I was in New York, it was mostly professional theater. Although, when I first moved to New York, I couldn't afford to live. I lived in Manhattan most of the time that I lived in New York. But when I first moved to New York, I lived in Yonkers because I couldn't afford to live in Manhattan. And when I lived in Yonkers, I did do a community theater play there. I directed 1776 at the Asbury Summer Theater, which was in a little church in Yonkers. But they did good stuff. I just, for some reason, that just came to mind. And it was very similar to like the Actor Singers and stuff. A bunch of community people getting together and trying to do the very best work that they could. And it was a really great experience for me. I really enjoyed that. But when I was in New York City, I worked only in the professional theater there. And I never really did, New York City work for me was mostly in the theater management, accounting side of it. I never really achieved the directing in New York. I got close. I was the artistic director of the American Stage Company, different from the American Stage Festival, although similarly named, which was in New Jersey, just over the bridge. So, just over the George Washington Bridge. So, and I got to work with a lot of great people there, and we were reviewed by the New York Times and all of that stuff. So it felt like being a part of the New York community, but it was not. It was still more like a regional theater than New York theater. So I really didn't have that experience of doing artistic work in New York City.
Gotcha.
That was more the
All right. Well, I feel like I've kept you guys for long enough, but this was a fantastic discussion. I very much appreciated your time. Before we head out, why don't we kind of talk about Deadly Deal a little bit more, one more time. When does the show go up? Where can people see it? What does that look like?
You want to take that, Paul?
Sure. All right. So not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. So the first 3 weekends in November. First weekend being 2 shows at the Tupelo Music Hall in Derry. The next weekend there are 2 shows at Kimball Jenkins Estate. So the first one's a dinner theater, or not. You could choose. You can either be in the mezzanine and skip the dinner part, or be on the ground floor. And tickets to the opening night are really close to selling out, very close. The Sunday performance still has plenty of tickets left. Then Kimball Jenkins is a dessert theater. It's a smaller venue, so that might also well sell out. So probably better to get tickets sooner than later online. And the desserts are great, because I was there for the dessert theater last year and it was really good. Then we're doing, this is a brand new thing for us. We're going up to Maine to a gunquit on the 3rd weekend of November, and just doing 1 show on a Sunday afternoon. It's sort of optional dinner that the restaurant is sort of offering levels of tickets, where like you can have dinner in the theater. Dinner in the restaurant and go up to the theater, etc. So that's at Jonathan's in a gunquit. Brand new venue for us. We've never been there before. And so it's an experiment for us, whether it's a viable venue or not. So first 3 weekends in November, 2 of them in New Hampshire, 1 of them in Maine. And should be a really good time.
Is this the first time Lemmy Theater's performed in Maine?
I believe so.
I
wouldn't swear to that, but I believe so.
It's very cool to be a part of that.
No, you know what? I think they performed once before at a resort on the coast of Maine. So I think this is the second time, now that I think about it.
Well, I gotcha. You're a liar, and now it's forever. We'll know you as the liar, Paul Smith. I'm just kidding. Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much. So once again, just to reiterate, November 1st and 2nd at Tupelo, November 8th and 9th at Kimball Jenkins, and November 16th at Jonathan's. You can buy tickets on lendmeatheater.org. Or just search the Facebook for Lend Me a Theater. We're posting stuff on there as well. Gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for your time. This was this was an awesome conversation. I learned a lot. I hope you guys had a good time with it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Dwight. It was fun. Yep.
You're very welcome. Alrighty. So thank you all for listening, and we look forward to talking to you next time. Once again, this was the Lend Me a Theater podcast. My name is Dwight Stearns. I've been joined today by Paul Smith and Matthew Parent, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.